Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the growing problem within the fanfic community of people coming in to print, bind, and sell very popular fan fiction, which is illegal. One thing I wanted to clarify about that story is that the people who are doing the selling, my understanding is they are not people who have been known as high-profile binders. So there are people who do bind fan fiction for themselves or for their friends as a hobby and not for profit. They're not the people doing this. It's a separate group of people who are coming in, having this done, and then looking to make a profit off of it. Today we're moving over to the steampunk community and we're talking about this.
Everyone, may I please speak?
No!
May I please speak?
What are you?
Take your hand off. Oh, yeah, no. Your hand off your or I will lay you the fuck off.
I got tagged in that video so many times. And at first I wasn't able to find virtually anything. And that's why it's taken so long to get to a point where I can film this, because I've spent probably the last week trying to connect with as many people as humanly possible who were directly involved and have some sort of account to give. This is the first time I had to go to people like on Facebook and be like, hello, I am the niche tea lady. Please tell me your story. So that video was recorded on the third day of the Wicked World's Fair, which is an event that took place in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania on February 23rd through 25th. You can think of the Wicked World's Fair as a minor convention for the area. The event was held in a hotel in their event spaces. It was marketed as an event where people could buy tickets and come by on one or multiple days to shop at a whole bunch of local vendors that they had procured to show up for the event. They'd hired a whole host of local bands to perform. I believe standard tickets also included access to a certain number of more standard convention events, such as like panel discussions. But then in addition to that, there were a number of like VIP events that you could purchase additional tickets to on top of your standard convention ticket. As I mentioned before, this was predominantly marketed as a steampunk event. Steampunk, if you're not familiar, is a subgenre of sci-fi. It's a futuristic genre, but one that imagines a future where both the aesthetic and technology of the time is based entirely on early 1900s. So you get this really cool combination aesthetically of a futuristic depiction of what steam technology could have become if it weren't taken over by other forms, combined with like really neat old school fashion. Picture Downton Abbey, but like with a lot more goggles and gears incorporated into everything. The event did look to be broader than just steampunk. There was definitely a lot of like alt, spooky, goth, witchy vibes, weird nerd, outcast kind of stuff. All of that seemed to be very welcome. In theory, very cool. So how did we go from that to grown man yelling on the floor and grown woman pulling a miwa at a whole crowd of people? It all starts with the man in the Dr. Pepper shirt. This man is named Jeff Mach, and he's the person who put on this event. This is also something he does. He puts on events. He has a webpage called Jeff Mach Events, and he claims to have done tons of these successfully throughout his career. But clearly something went wrong this time, because this video was filmed during a vendor called meeting while the event was still going on, so the vendors could confront Jeff directly about what a complete shit show they felt that event had been. And there's a whole host of problems that they're alleging. The biggest by far being that Jeff massively oversold the event to vendors. According to one of his vendor coordinators, the space that they booked could hold about 60 to 65 vendors, and he booked more than 80. And I found a post from him on Facebook saying that they had 113. Then multiple people have said that when they showed up on Thursday night to set up so that things would be ready to go on Friday for the start of the event, Jeff was the person trying to put people in places. He had no idea where he wanted people. He didn't have like a chart already set out so that he could just tell people where to go. They were left waiting for hours while Jeff tried to set each person up in a place one by one. A ton of people say that they didn't get the place that they paid for, like they maybe paid more money to be in the main ballroom, but then a ton of them were put somewhere else. Tons of people have said they did not get the size space that they originally paid for. So like if they paid for a 10 by 10 space, they'd get like a 6-foot table. As they ran out of room, they just started cramming vendors any place they could find space. People were put right next to and in front of bars and stages. People were put in hallways and were just kind of left to figure it out themselves to allow the traffic to continue to pass through. Somebody was put in a closet. And then finally, people were eventually just literally turned away. People who had paid for rooms at this hotel for this convention so that they could vend. Or in some cases were told that they could only do room vending, which has a whole other host of complications that go along with it. And because it was so cramped, vendors who had specific requirements for their vending space ended up having to leave. For example, a tattoo artist who was supposed to be there. On top of that, there are a lot of accounts that the hotel that this took place in was chosen because it was cheap. And the reason that it was cheap is because the owner wasn't fixing it up because they think he wants to demolish it. Allegedly, I haven't heard any statement from the owner themselves, but there are multiple accounts and pictures that at least one vendor had the ceiling collapse on top of their vending space, which was also leaking a bunch of water onto her stuff, but that really concerns me from a mold standpoint. And then the final nail in the coffin for a lot of these guys was that he allegedly claims that there would be thousands of people coming and it would be really worth it for their businesses for them to buy into this event. But again, according to that vending coordinator, there were actually more like a couple hundred for the whole weekend. And a lot of the business done was actually just vendors themselves supporting each other. And according to these vendors, as they're running into all these problems throughout the weekend, they cannot find Jeff, or if they can find him, they can't keep him in one place for very long because on Sunday during the event, he was planning to get married. So all of his time was being focused on that. He mentions that in the video, actually, the long version of it, like 5 hours after that video was taken, he got married in that hotel. In the event space, just to be clear. So the video we all saw was the come to Jesus meeting between the vendors and Jeff on the third day where they were confronting him about all of these problems and asking for refunds. Jeff had allegedly told everyone that he was going to be able to give them refunds, but that he didn't have the money immediately available. Money flow from Jeff had been a problem the whole weekend beyond the vendor stuff too. Multiple people account for the fact that Jeff was unable to pay the sound equipment people who were setting up in the main ballroom where most of the vendors were. So they just left and there was no music, entertainment, anything in the main ballroom, and anybody who was scheduled to be in there just left and didn't perform. And a number of those VIP events that I mentioned earlier that people had to pay extra to go to did not happen the way they were supposed to or were just canceled. For example, one of those was an absinthe tasting, and it was literally like the bar's absinthe, like one bottle, and people just drank that one bottle of absinthe. Oh, I forgot food. The hotel wasn't able to provide food for some reason, and Jeff didn't know about that until the day of, and so he marketed this one food truck was there. Like the whole time, maybe 2 food trucks, that was it. All right, I have to move to the aftermath or I'm gonna run out of time. That I'm aware of, no one has gotten a refund. Jeff denied people refunds through Eventbrite. Now I believe he's claiming that someone else took over the event and they're the ones who are gonna have to give them refunds. Jeff has pointed to everyone but himself for every single thing here. He is taking zero responsibility for any of it. It's the vendor coordinator's fault, even though he allegedly claimed to have fired them before the event. It's Eventbrite's fault, even though he then claims that he's worked with them for 20 years and it's been fine. It's the Jeff Mach haters' fault for making people distrust him in the first place. And that's where this kind of seals itself for me, because when you look into it, this man has a history, both a business history and a personal history. Personal stuff, I'm not going to focus on in this for a number of reasons. I'm going to say up front, because I know it's going to come up, the woman that he married is significantly younger than him. She's like 21 years old. She and he are both adults. That's all I'm gonna say about that. But on the business side, this isn't the first event of his that has gotten fucked up. And it was bad enough to the point that vendors have come forward who have worked with him on previous events and said, we warned you guys not to do this. So this is what happens when you work with this man. We told you. That's a hell of a reputation to have if you haven't done anything wrong. I mean, I've literally heard the phrase he was run out of New Jersey multiple times. But a lot of the vendors that went to this event didn't know who Jeff Mach was. This dude basically has lore, it goes back so far, and it is overwhelmingly bad. But he does seem to know how to build very strong loyalty with specific people. The woman with the sword in the video seems to be one of them. I'm not going to talk about her for a number of reasons, but I will say that I've heard nothing but good things about her, even from people who truly hate this man, Jeff Mach. And I'll say for myself, when I watch that video, it looks like she's making a very bad decision as a gut reaction and then immediately de-escalated from there. She should not have done it, but based on what I've heard, I'm like, okay. I will say personally, from what I've seen in the way that he talks to these people in the video, he doesn't take responsibility for anything. I'm going to show some screenshots of a personal conversation between him and a supposed friend after he thought they were vague booking about him. And you can see how incredibly dysregulated this man is emotionally. I do not think he needs to be in charge of anything. As of now, it does look like there are other events that could be his that will be happening in the Northeast area over the coming months. Please look into any of these and make sure he's not associated before you attend them as a vendor or an attendee. It's hard enough to be a small business without people like this making your life harder and making you lose money.